Hey everyone, welcome to today's tutorial where I'm going to show you a game-changing workflow for landscape creation in Unreal Engine. In this video, you're going to learn how to use a non-destructive landscape sculpting technique that was added in Unreal Engine 5.1, I believe. We're going to create landscape patches or stamps that can be easily modified. We can integrate static meshes that dynamically deform the terrain around them, and we can build natural, complex looking environments in a fraction of the time. All of this will help you break free from the limitations of traditional landscape sculpting and give you much more flexibility and control. Now, before we dive in, I want to mention that if you like what you see in this tutorial, then my entire WorldForge project, complete with Nanite deformation, landscape, Nanite foliage, and the Atmosforge for atmospheric systems, is available as a package on my Fab and Patreon page. Now, this tutorial only scratches the surface of what's possible with these tools, so definitely check it out if you want to elevate your environment creation. Now, let's get started with this awesome landscape workflow. Now, this is a feature that was added in Unreal Engine 5.1, which deals with landscape patches or stamps. This is a feature that a lot of people don't actually know about, and I want to show you what it's all about. This is going to change the way you approach landscape creation. When working with landscapes in Unreal Engine, you'll encounter loads of complex shapes that can create believable environments tailored to your needs. However, traditional landscape sculpting often leads to a destructive workflow, making it difficult to undo changes or revert to previous states. Now, today I'm going to show you a solution that mitigates this problem by implementing a non-destructive workflow for landscape sculpting. Instead of using brushes that permanently modify your terrain, we'll use alpha textures to create landscape shapes. This approach not only eliminates the destructive workflow, but also significantly speeds up your terrain creation process. To use this workflow, we need to enable two plugins in Unreal Engine. Now, go to your plugins section and search for Landmass. This is a beta plugin, so use it at your own discretion, so be mindful. Next, while still in the plugin section, enable the Landscape Patch plugin as well. This is an experimental feature, so be mindful that things might change in the future in future updates. Once both plugins are enabled, restart your engine to apply the changes. Now that we've got our plugins ready to go, let's create a blueprint that will harness the power of this awesome feature. First, create a new folder. I'm calling mine Tutorial Patches to keep things organized. Now inside this folder, right-click and create a new Bluprint class of type Actor. We'll name it something descriptive like BP_patch landscape. Double-click to open it, and let's get to work. Once you're in the Bluprint editor, search for a scene component and drag it right into the default scene root. This will become our new pivot point. Now for the magic part. Click the Add button again and search for the Landscape Texture Patch. Make sure you add this specific component. Hit compile, and we're good to go. Now it's time to see our creation in action. Just drag and drop your blueprint anywhere into your world. You might get a pop-up asking to create a Landscape Patch Manager. Don't worry if you don't see this, it probably means you already have one in your scene. Just double check by searching for Landscape Patch Manager in the search bar. If there's no patch manager, no problem. Just hit the plus button at the top left of the search panel and add one manually. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Select your landscape texture patch component to reveal all of its nice options. You'll see the settings like blend mode and the source mode. This is where we'll sample a texture asset. Find the high texture you like. I've got about 9 in my project, and you can drag any of these into your texture asset slot. I'm going to add these into the description below as well. Now don't panic if your landscape suddenly looks weird, this is normal and here's the fix. Look for the height encoding setting and change it from world units to 0 to 1. Watch as your landscape magically starts behaving exactly how we want it to based on the height information that we just added. Now here's a crucial tip that will save you tons of headache. Always, and I do mean always, select the scene pivot before moving your blueprint around or scaling it or rotating it. If you accidentally move the landscape texture patch component instead, your pivot in patch will get out of sync. If this happens, and trust me, it happens to everyone, just hit undo until everything lines up again and then resume your editing. Now let's play around and make this landscape, truly ours. Try changing the shape from a rounded rectangle to a circle. I personally find circles work amazingly well. Experiment with the Falloff slider to get those perfect transitions, and if you want a bigger effect, then scale it up by selecting the pivot point, remember, not the texture patch but the pivot point, and then you can actually scale. As you move your patch around, watch how dynamically it reshapes the terrain. You can pull it up to create mountains or push it down for valleys, play with those fall-off values for sharp cliffs or gentle slopes, and switch between different textures for, completely different landscape formations. Now here's where this tool really shines. Want another patch? Just hold Alt and drag the duplicated. That's like really super quick. These patches will work together based on their priority settings. Think of it like layering instruments in a song. You're creating a whole landscape symphony here. But make sure all your blueprints are targeting the same patch manager. This is super important. And one of my absolute favorite things about this is when you drag a blueprint into an area with foliage, watch how the trees and plants magically adapt to your new landscape as long as they were painted with a foliage tool. The collisions work perfectly just like with normal landscape deformation. And this system even plays nicely with the WorldForge Nanite displacement of my project. It's basically seamless. Now, there is one limitation to be aware of. You won't be able to paint or sculpt the landscape wherever your blueprint's alpha texture is active. So if you try sculpting in these areas, it will seem like nothing's really happening. You can adjust the alpha if you want more subtle effects, but here's a cool trick. If you move the blueprint away, any sculpting you did underneath will suddenly appear. So that's when you're in the, in the landscape mode. Once you get the hang of this non-destructive workflow, you'll wonder how you ever live without it. It's seriously a game changer for landscape creation. If you guys enjoy what you see here with the WorldForge and the Corinthian modular pack, please have a look on my Fab page in order to get these two projects. The Corinthian is a modular pack of Roman Corinthian type architecture. You can build full-fledged cities and temples with it. I'm currently having a go myself here to put it all together. It's really, really nice. And obviously it works very well with the WorldForge having RVT blending and things like that as well. That will make it look really, really nice. And you can see in here just the architecture, the sculptures, the quality of it is really, really good. The artist that I've been working with has been really nice, really good at putting this together. He's done a fantastic job and he's working on improving it even further with loads of new features. But as you can see, there's a lot of modular style of structures in here that just kind of go really well together. The environments, the interiors are all fully lit and it works really well. Obviously, this is coming into composition with a WorldForge tool that I've created, which is a landscape with nanite displaced environments and very crisp, amazing type of blends that we've done. As you can see here, I'm just walking through this temple, which looks really, really stunning. I would recommend anyone to give it a look. We're planning on releasing a demo soon, so you can actually play around this scene without having to, first look at it, and then you'll be able to make your purchase if you'd like to try it out. But yeah, if you want to support the channel, if you want to give this a go, just feel free. It comes with everything that you're seeing in here. The World Forge comes with the Atmos Forge, which is this cloud system, and it also comes with a lot of with foliage and a lot of environmental effects, while the Corinthian pack comes with all these structures that you're seeing here, and there's much more to discover. There's statues, there's all sorts of braziers and urns and all sorts of items. It's honestly, it's really cool. It's got carpets and everything, and columns and lamps, and there's so many assets in this pack. It's actually unreal. No pun intended. But yeah, have a look and see if you guys like it. Give it a go. Now you can also use static meshes with this landscape deformation. Let me show you another awesome feature where we can use this to dynamically alter our landscape. This takes our non-destructive workflow to a whole new level. So start with a static mesh like this rock formation I have here. Now you can notice that the bottom of it is hollow, but when I drag into the scene and make it bigger, you'll notice it doesn't really blend well with the environment. The mesh sits awkwardly on the landscape because the terrain is sloped differently, or just shaped in general, just shaped differently. Normally, you'd have to manually adjust this mesh quite a bit to make it follow the landscape, or rather make the landscape follow the mesh. But there's a much better way with this workflow. Now here's our magic solution. We can click the add button on the right side of our mesh detail panel. We can search for a landscape circle height patch and add this component to our mesh. And what happens now is really cool. This allows our mesh to deform the landscape just like we did before, but now it's using the mesh as a pivot point. The deformation happens in the shape of a circle automatically. Now look at this. As we drag the mesh up or down, the landscape follows. It's like the landscape is now attached to the mesh. But we can fine-tune this integration to make it look even better. We can go into the landscape circle height patch settings, and we can play around with the radius and fall-off sliders, and this lets us perfectly align the landscape blend with the mesh. Now, something really cool to note, if you move around the landscape circle height patch itself and not the mesh, the sculpt changes shape while the mesh stays in place, and this gives you even more control to create a perfect blend between the landscape deformation and the mesh itself. Drag the mesh up or down to further refine the integration, scale up the mesh, which will scale up the landscape deformation as well, affecting a larger area. And if you have RVT enabled, which I do in my WorldForge project, we can take this further. We can go into the mesh material. So in the WorldForge, all meshes have RVT as an option. We can enable it to blend the mesh with the landscape. Just make sure that your RVT height and material are set to match the landscape so that it works quite seamlessly. This will create an incredibly nice transition, a very nice blend between your mesh and the terrain, and the landscape is being deformed by the mesh while the RVT setting enhances that visual blend. Now this technique is transformational, and it has countless applications. You can move your mesh anywhere on the landscape, and the landscape itself will follow. So you can plan ahead to build entire areas where the landscape follows the shape of your hero assets, create more natural looking environments in a fraction of the time. Note that if you rotate the mesh, it won't rotate the sculpt of the landscape, so it only affects deformation on the z-axis. Now this workflow works with any mesh. It's not limited to just this one type. So if you replace your mesh with a different shape, maybe like a rock or something like that, you can adjust your circle height patch settings to match the new shape. We can also enable nanite displacement on the landscape, like I can do on my WorldForge, for even more detail. The collision blending is excellent too. Your character can move through the scene and walk up to these meshes with proper collision between the landscape sculpt and the mesh. Now, this powerful technique dramatically speeds up your process of building realistic integrated scenes, and I can see it as a pivotal tool in things like speed sculpting. And that wraps up our tutorial on non-destructive landscape workflows in Unreal Engine. I hope you found these techniques as useful and time-saving as I do, and I want to take a moment to say a massive thank you to all my Patreon supporters who make these tutorials possible. Your continued support allows me to create these in-depth guides and develop tools like the WorldForge. A special shout out to my viewers as well. Your comments, questions, and engagement help shape the content that I create. I read all your feedback and it truly makes a difference. So if you enjoyed the tutorial, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future updates. And if you're using these techniques in your own projects, I'd love to see what you create. So drop a link in the comments below and I'll definitely take a look. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Keep creating.